Good evening and a very warm welcome to everyone at this live event, which is an informative event for the 3-year LLB Honours Program from the National Law School of India University. May I now ask my co-panelists and speakers to kindly switch on their camera. Thank you. Thank you very much to all of you for taking the time to join us this evening. We're very excited to spend the next hour or so with you, taking you through the broad details of the 3-year LLB Honours Program from the National Law School of India University, Bangalore. This, of course, is a relatively new program. The first cohort only joined us last year, and we're very excited to tell you about how things have gone, what we've got planned for this program in the coming days. And I've got my colleagues, Dr. Arun Thiruvengadam and Dr. Betsy, Rajasingh and Vinayashri, to take you through these details. Just to set some context before we commence, this, as I've said, is a general information session about the program as a whole. We will subsequently hold other sessions where we will go into the details of the entrance test for this program, which is the NLSAT LLB, and which is scheduled for the 30th of April this year. We've received a number of questions from people already about the pattern of the test, what the questions might be like, how you could go about preparing for the test, and so on. And we'd request your patience on that front for just a little while longer, because we will have a session just like this, but dedicated to the test and your preparations for the test. This session, however, will address issues such as what the ideas and the thinking behind the program are, what you might expect by way of pedagogy, syllabus, curriculum, etc., should you decide to join the program, and what sort of opportunities might open up for you once you complete the program. We're going to divide this session roughly into 3 portions. I'm going to first invite Dr. Rajasingh to take us through an overview of the National Law School, how the institution has come to occupy the position of prominence that it does today. And then Dr. Thiruvengadam will take us through more details of the LLB program itself. After that, we will have a short question and answer session, for which I would request all the attendees, if you have any questions, please use the Q&A to type your questions down. If you don't know where that is, that should appear towards the bottom of your Zoom window, right next to all the mic icon, the camera icon, so on and so forth. You'll see a little icon for Q&A, and you can put your questions down there. We won't be able to take up all the questions that you might send in. However, we'll try and pick out at least the broad themes of the questions that we see there and direct them to the speakers. A number of you have also sent in your questions in advance at the time of registering for the webinar, and we're going to attempt to prioritize those questions. So, as a quick recap, we're focusing on the program as a whole. We're going to talk about the institution. We'll use the Q&A to receive your questions. And once we're done with the overview of these 2 areas, we'll try and address as many as possible. With that, may I now hand over to Dr. Rajasingh to take us through an overview of the LLB program.
A very good evening to all of you. I once again would like to welcome you all for joining this session, and we hope to clarify your questions with regards to the 3-year LLB program at NLS. To begin with, in terms of what NLS is and about it, most of you must have prior knowledge about NLS, but for the benefit of those who do not know, I'm going to briefly run you through a brief introduction of the National Law School of India University, how it began as an institution, and how it has developed so far, and its vision for the future as well. Now, for those of you who don't know, the National Law School began in 1988 as a bold experiment in legal education. Now, why was this a bold experiment? Basically, because prior to the commencement of the National Law School, basically, an undergraduate law degree was available to students, or students could pursue an undergraduate law degree only after completion of a graduate degree. So basically, anybody who was freshly out of school could not enroll into a law school. So the founding faculty under the eminent leadership of Professor N.R. Madhav Menon, basically they conceptualized a 5-year integrated law degree program, which was an undergraduate law degree, which was directly available to students who had just completed schooling. And this was basically an integrated degree. So it integrated concepts, or rather BA along with the LLB. And basically the curriculum was interdisciplinary, which meant students in the first couple of years studied subjects like history and political science, sociology, and economics, which basically gave them a strong grounding, not just on those subjects, but it helped them study and understand better their study of law. So the curriculum was interdisciplinary, as well as there was focus on cutting edge pedagogy. Basically, traditional law schools have a traditional lecture method through which basically they would impart legal education, but with NLS, they followed basically this pedagogy, which was inspired from basically the model which was used in the Harvard Law School by Christopher Langdell. It was called the case method. So in this case method, a lot of focus was on legal doctrine per se. So basically, students would engage a lot in cases, as well as the study of legal doctrine, along with the Socratic method of teaching. So there was no conventional lecture method, and this was largely a success. It's followed even until today. And there was also focus on experiential learning, which basically meant that the study of law was not just confined to the classroom as such, but students were exposed to basically internships where they could get hands-on knowledge about the law. There was also clinical courses which were mandatory and made the whole learning experience more fulfilling. And also in terms of specialization, they were, other than the prescribed mandatory courses by the Bar Council of India, you had a large amount of electives from which students could choose and study. And these electives were not offered just by internal faculty, but basically leading practitioners from outside the confines of the law school. They were also offering electives, and even today it's offered, and students could basically choose electives as per their choice and get a holistic knowledge of the law as such. And this was a fully residential program, which had its advantages because there was large scale peer-to-peer interaction, as well as there was lots of more scope for interaction between faculty and students. And it just made the whole learning experience more enjoyable and holistic as such. And the success of the National Law School was not just based on this cutting edge pedagogy or the experiential education which it was offering, but also because of a large scale collaboration between the bar, the bench, and the academia. For instance, the Chief Justice of India acts as the Chancellor of the NLS, as well as you have Supreme Court judges and members in the Bar Council, its chairman, who are all part of the governing bodies of the institution. So the Executive Council, as well as the University Council, as members from the bar and the bench as well. Nevertheless, faculty did enjoy considerable autonomy, not just in terms of how they basically developed the syllabus or delivered it, but also in terms of overall governance of the institution. So if you look at the story so far, right from where it began to until today, NLS has basically led from the front in terms of legal education. It's not just revitalized it, it's basically been as an example for many institutions to emulate it, the model that it developed. And this is not just basically evident in terms of the success of its students, of its alumni, but also in terms of ranking systems. It's always basically been on the top of the law school list in India. So if you look at the NIRF ranking, which is the National Institute for, basically it is under the Ministry of Education and the Government of India. In this ranking metric, it's been consistently ranked #1 right from its inception. NLS has topped basically the ranking metric, and it's been the #1 law school in the country. So not just under the NIRF ranking, but also under private ranking systems, we've always topped the list. If you look at our students, for instance, most of them have bagged very prominent scholarships, such as the Rhodes Scholarship, the Chevening Scholarship, and the Commonwealth Scholarship, to name a few, to basically pursue their higher education in institutions of eminence abroad. And most of our alumni are basically have gone on to study in leading institutions across the globe, such as Harvard, Yale, Oxford, and Cambridge. They've not just bagged scholarship and studied here, but basically they've also, some of them have also remained as professors there. And actually, most of the faculty who are currently working in NLS are also alumni from these prestigious institutions. For instance, my fellow panelist, Professor Arun, who is actually an NLS alumni. Basically, he went on to study at NYU. He did his master's and his PhD there. He's taught in some of the leading law schools across the globe, and he's come back to NLS to teach here as well. So we have our students who've not just gone there, but basically come back and here as well as established very strong careers abroad as well. And if you look at careers in law per se, and what career opportunities that NLS could basically give you, you have basically recruitments from leading law firms, and some of our alumni are basically leading practitioners of the law before the Supreme Court or even before the high courts. And you have lots of corporates as well as leading law firms recruiting students directly from campus. And they've also established careers in the judiciary. And if you look beyond the law, there are students who've gone on to basically become even journalists or authors for that matter, and have also been part of the Indian Administrative Services, where they're serving as IAS officers, as well as diplomats in the Indian Foreign Services. So a lot of career avenues are available in terms of students who have graduated from the National Law School, because they basically take on positions of eminence, not just within the law field, but also beyond the law field. And if you look at the future directions in which the law school is heading, we've basically increased the intake across all programs, starting from the 5-year LLB honors program as well as the 3-year program. There's been an increase in the number of students we are taking in, and to replicate the success of the 5-year program, we began this 3-year LLB program last year, and we are increasing intake there as well. And in terms of the PhD program as well, we've redesigned it so that PhD is available not just in the stream of law, but also in interdisciplinary fields. In terms of eligibility as well, right now somebody who's finished their master's is not just eligible, but somebody who's finished their 5-year LLB or 3-year LLB is eligible for registering as a PhD student in law under the National Law School. And we've also been in talks and collaborating with institutions like the Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore, as well as the Indian Institute of Science, to start multidisciplinary programs. So not just the study of law, but along with law, some other disciplines as well, like science or management. So we've been on the talks to bring in programs like this and build university clusters along with these institutions of eminence to build our programs and basically expanded scope. And also in terms of pace, we do have a distance education program, which has largely been growing in terms of the number of courses that we offer. We've increased the number of courses, and there is a lot of scope there as well in terms of somebody who can't directly enroll into a traditional regular mode program can study various postgraduate diplomas as well as a master's in business law in this format. So that's it from me. I will hand it over back to Bhavani.
Thank you very much, Professor. Before I hand over to our next speaker, I should also hasten to inform all our attendees and participants that the two speakers that we have today are, of course, faculty at the National Law School, but perhaps very, very importantly in this context, are very closely involved with the 3-year LLB honors program, not just in terms of teaching the students who are part of that program, but in also helping design and conceptualize the program. Given that, I think it's going to be very, very informative and very, very helpful for all of us to next hear from Dr. Thiruvengadam about the program itself. Arun, all yours.
Thank you, Bhavin, and thank you, Betsy, for laying the ground so well. I've got about 10 minutes, and I'll take you through a few slides which basically explain what Bhavin has just set out, the 3-year LLB honors program. I see that we've already received a lot of questions about how the 3-year LLB program is different from the 5-year LLB program. And as Betsy explained, the 5-year LLB program began in 1988. At that time, what it did was make it possible for people leaving school to come into a law program. Because until then, you had to be a graduate before you could begin your 3-year LLB. If you look at our website, there are other videos which explain the origin of this program. And in one of them, our Vice Chancellor, Professor Krishnaswamy, explains that while in the 1980s, there was a need for bringing in the 5-year law program, we are now almost a quarter century since that time. And we've also seen what has happened to people who've graduated from the 5-year program. So many of them have taken on, as Betsy explained in that slide, traditional roles in the legal profession. So many of them have become lawyers at the bar. Several of them have really joined the new law firms which were starting out in the 1990s. And of course, many graduates of NLS then went on to establish their own law firms. Beyond that, there are people who've taken that 5-year law degree and gone into sometimes allied careers and sometimes careers where it wouldn't seem that a law degree would help you. Right? So there are people who have entered the civil services, the Indian Foreign Service, and their legal knowledge arguably is helpful. But many people have gone into careers in theater, in the restaurant business, where it's not obvious that a law degree is useful. But if you think of it, you can see the links between some of the skills you learn in a professional degree and how they are translatable. So basically this slide, what it sets out is the details of the 3-year program. And as you will see, this is a degree that is now recognized by, the Bar Council of India. And in a way, we are going back to the law programs before the 5-year degree was established. And now some people might say, why is that happening? I think that's happening because of a recognition that the landscape today is very different. It's also a recognition that in the old system, there were things which were valuable. And perhaps given that we are now operating in a very different India, where there is also a need for different kinds of professionals, that is very useful. So if you think of countries like the United States or Australia, where you have the JD degree, which is a second undergraduate degree in law, and that's basically what the 3-year LLB is also quite similar to. We think that there is value in doing that, partly also to account for the fact that making decisions at 17 seems more and more an anomaly. Right? People get into a university at 17 in certain parts, and then once they've studied, they think that there are other options open. So that's what we are really aiming at here. This degree is open to students who have a bachelor's degree in any discipline from a recognized university. And as Bhavin mentioned, both Betsy and I have been involved in teaching the pioneer batch of the 3-year LLB cohort. And that is a very diverse group. There are people who are coming in straight from a good undergraduate degree program. They've graduated and have come straight into the law program. There are others who worked for a few years and thought about how a law degree might help them. And I want to make clear that while this is a full-time program, it is going to employ the pedagogical strategies that Betsy talked about a little earlier. And we very much intend to, and we are already implementing some of the things in that old model. But we are also adapting them to people who bring also different sets of skills. So as this slide tells you, you can get a sense of the different streams that are represented in this initial cohort. I'll just move on to the next slide. This is about curriculum and pedagogy. As Betsy had already explained, some of the things that we used and deployed in the 5-year program, we intend to take those and enhance them. So as the first point indicates here, you have mandatory and elective courses that the Bar Council requires law programs to have before their graduates can come up for certification by the Bar Council. But we've thought about how we could enhance that. And if you think of the 5-year program, NLS offers a BA LLB honors degree. So in the first 3 years of the 5-year program, you are basically doing subjects that you would do for a regular BA. Now, the advantage in a 3-year LLB is people already come in with domain knowledge in a particular discipline. We want to take advantage of that and then enhance that. So there are new electives which the Bar Council doesn't require, but we have thought about how we could take the knowledge that graduates already have and how those courses, which are typically interdisciplinary, there are courses on law and political science, law and history, which combine both legal knowledge and knowledge of a particular social science or humanities division. So in that's the process that we've brought into the 3-year program. So in some ways, it is a little different from the 5-year program. I see that a couple of questions are directed towards that. So the 3-year program is obviously going to be different, not just in terms of its duration, but also the fact that it already is a very mixed cohort. So there are, in the first batch, there are engineers studying alongside people with political science backgrounds, with literature backgrounds, and they're all studying a common set of courses which deal with the law and other courses which have an interdisciplinary aspect towards them. The last point here, there's a focus on honing research and writing skills. We believe that the 5-year program also attempts to do that in certain ways, but in the 3-year program, we are thinking about how that can be a particular focus, along with this idea of experiential learning, which is also what I will turn to in the next slide, where this idea of experiential learning, in some ways, this is the idea that you want to make people ready for the world. Right? So in some contexts, experiential learning just means that they will be setting out and they'll be better integrated with the legal profession. Right? So that's very much part of the objective. So through the kind of internships and placements that the 5-year program has, we will replicate those also for the 3-year program. And so the pathway to legal practice, again, all the dimensions of legal practice, whether you want to be a courtroom lawyer or a transactional lawyer or a legal academic, right? So those things, and within those, there are, again, many variations that one could think of. And the experiential learning also tries to replicate that. But as one of the previous slides indicated, NLS graduates have in the past gone to multiple other careers, working in domestic or international non-governmental organizations, which may or may not have a direct connection to the law. And in that sense, what we are trying to do is make sure that this experiential learning component goes beyond just legal practice. Right? And as I said, one of the ambitions of the program is to try and prepare people for pathways beyond the law and in areas where they will be able to use their legal knowledge. But more than that, they will be able to use the skills that of reading closely, of writing clearly, and enhancing those skills. We think those will be valuable for many other things beyond the pathways that we've typically focused on. Moving on, the cohort, the first batch of the 3-year LLB, we admitted 60 students. For next year, the plan is to admit 2 cohorts of 60 students each. So within each cohort, the numbers are still small. If you look at global universities, it's quite common for people to be part of batches which are 400 to up to 1,000. NLS's distinctive pedagogical strategies have relied on the fact that the cohorts have been typically small. They used to be 80, they've now come down to 60 in each section. So we're going to try and maintain that. So each of the 2 sections for the 3-year LLB going forward will be of 60 students. There is, NLS has a residential requirement, but we're also thinking of allowing people to stay off campus and be close enough to campus where they can get the sense of a residential university in terms of having activities beyond the normal class routine. And we can talk a little bit more beyond it. This is one of the things which has become quite distinctive about the NLS education, having the opportunity to go on student exchanges. And so this slide basically sets out universities with whom we've had in the past exchange programs. And we're also in the process of building new collaborative ties with other institutions. And just as even for the 5-year LLB, this option historically has been limited to relatively few students. And we're now thinking about how that option can be made available to other people, including by securing funding, because traveling abroad and staying abroad involves a considerable expense, which many of our students will not be able to afford without support either from us or from the partner institution. So this is something that we're thinking of across the university, especially with the scale going on, the scaling up process going on. And we can talk about this more perhaps in the Q&A or in the FAQ section as well. I think that's pretty much what I want to say about the 3-year LLB program. I'll hand it back to Bhavin now. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Arun. Before I open up for the Q&A session, I'm just going to share a few key details about the admission process to the 3-year LLB honors program. Many of you, I suspect, will already be familiar with some of these details, but for the benefit of those who are not, here we go. The admissions to the 3-year LLB honors program will be through a test, which is called the NLSAT LLB. This is an exam that will last about 2.5 hours and is divided into 2 portions. There is a part A, which has multiple choice questions, and part B, where you will actually be required to write out the answers to a broad range of questions. A bachelor's degree in any discipline from a recognized national or foreign university is mandatory for you to be eligible for the examination. And as you can see on the screen here, there are various cutoff marks from these undergraduate degrees that you must have in order to be eligible. Students in the final year of their bachelor's degree are also eligible to apply. There are, of course, reservations for various categories in the program, and the details of the test, as well as all of these other details, are all available on the website of the National Law School. I will be sharing the URL that you could visit, and I will also shortly be putting up on the screen a QR code that you could scan instead to go directly to the website. There is also an email helpline that you could reach out to with any questions that you may have. We've received a number of fairly specific pointed queries, which may be relevant perhaps to 1 or 2 persons, and we may not be able to take those up today, but I'd encourage you to visit the website for details and to write to the helpline. We'll share those details shortly. A few important dates for you to keep in mind. Applications are now being accepted for the NLSAT LLB. The last date to register, to complete all your registration formalities for the test, is the 6th of April, but we'd encourage you not to leave that to the last moment, but to complete your registration as early as possible. The test will take place on the 30th of April, and classes will commence in the beginning of July later this year. Fees and financial aid information, I'm going to leave this up on the screen for a few moments. For those of you who are interested in the fee details, please note that there are also financial aid opportunities that are available. I'll just display that information for a few brief moments here. Once again, these details are available on the website of the National Law School. There's a tab that says admissions when you go to nls.ac.in. You can click on that. You'll have all of this information available there. You can also click through from that page to a much more detailed set of sub-pages that have a lot of this information set out in greater detail for the LLB Honors Program. As I'd said, I'm going to put up a QR code here. So for those of you who are interested, you could scan the code, and this will take you to the relevant page on the NLS website. The URL is also displayed there, and I'm going to ask my colleague Vinaya to share the email address with you as well. I'll leave this up for a few moments just to make sure everyone has had a chance to either scan the code or copy the URL down. But with all that said and done, I'm now going to open up for the question and answer session. And may I now request my colleague Vinayashri to direct these questions to our speakers. Vinay?
Yeah, thank you, Bhavin. So we have gone through the questions that all of you have put in the Q&A section. And we have identified some broad themes as we are seeing some repeated questions on similar themes. So first, I will pose these questions to the speakers. The first would be about how working professionals or college students, can they pursue this program in distance or online mode?
Let me just clarify, Vinay. Sorry, I want to say, and I think the slide mentioned this, but just to emphasize, so it's a full-time program. The reason we use the word residential there is to indicate that you're expected to be on campus. And even we are now experimenting a situation where some people express reasons why they want to live off campus for particular reasons that we find justifiable. But we make it very clear, even to those current students who are enrolled, that you should expect there could be classes scheduled. So just to give you an example, with the 3-year cohort, we had classes going all the way till 7:30 p.m. Right? So they would start. Sometimes instructors schedule extra classes which are held in the evening, and we do that because the 5-year LLB program was a fully residential program historically, and in that sense, we want to offer the same to the 3-year LLB program. So we do very much expect. It's also our campus post the pandemic has a very dynamic student life beyond evenings. So there are also cultural programs scheduled in the evenings, which we encourage students. They are not mandatory, but if you're living on campus and you attend, say, a Indian classical music performance or a movie screening, there are many student groups which do that, and we expect that students will be part of this life beyond classes and also interact with each other in the many student activities that are conducted. So to answer your question, there is no scope for anyone to do this course in an online mode. We are now back to doing, and one hopes that that state can continue, that everything is physical. There are some electives which are offered in hybrid mode when they're offered by working professionals who are also required to come and spend time on campus and take physical classes. But because they can't be, they are full-time professionals who are teaching and offering their expertise to our students. So we give them the option of taking some classes in hybrid mode. but the students are not sitting in the rooms. They're sitting in a class and they're all together so that their interaction can be in a physical space. So just to clarify, it is a full-time program. A couple of other questions. It is recognized by the Bar Council, and you can practice with a 3-year LLB, just as anybody with a 5-year degree can practice as well. Yeah. So I hope I've taken a few questions and answered them. Yeah. Back to you, Vinay.
Thank you. An extension of the same question, but for mid-career professionals who would like to take the program full-time, is that an option?
So I'll just say that in the current cohort, there are a few professionals who are taking a break from their work. Some of them are in government service and they've taken a leave of absence while they study. So that option is open. I'm not immediately able to think of it. I think the Bar Council does put a limit on what age you have to be before you can practice. So I don't know if that limit extends, but I think most of the people can fall in that. So there are a couple of questions of, if I graduated 3 years ago and I've done something else and I want to do law, the answer is yes, very much you can. Maybe in the FAQs, we'll do our research and let you know what is the cap for the Bar Council. But that is, I think anybody in their 20s can easily apply for the 3-year LLB program.
Thank you, Arun. I think one more question that we are getting repeatedly is that suppose a candidate has already appeared for the NLSAT earlier but has been rejected, can they reapply for this year?
They can. Yeah. So basically, there's no bar on them reapplying for the NLSAT again if they've given it previously. Unlike UPSC exams, you can definitely appear again.
Okay. Thank you. I think you had already mentioned about career opportunities after the program, but since many of them are asking about the kind of internship and placement support that NLS provides, could you probably answer that as well for some of our participants?
Yeah, I can take that because that was in my area. So as I'd indicated, so if you look at the 5-year LLB program, they have a structured process by which they can do internships. There are some practices that we follow in the first couple of years of the 5-year program, because students are slowly being introduced to law subjects. NLS offers a LL.B honors, as I indicated earlier. So in the first 3 years, you're also doing a lot of art subjects. And our sense historically has been that if you go to do an internship or a placement with a seasoned lawyer, you are not able to bring many skills to someone in practice. So we've tried to mix what pathways are open to people depending on the year of study that they are in. With the 3-year LLB program, it is a shorter course. And people bring to it already, as I said, domain knowledge in one or the other discipline. So we are now thinking, so the first cohort is going to get to this stage where they're coming to the end of their first year and they're going to go on placement. So we are thinking about how to adapt our existing placement and internship avenues to the 3-year LLB cohort, depending on what they're interested in and what pathways they are seeking to explore. So I think we'll try and put information about that, but I do want to say this is very much work in progress. We are doing this informational session for what will effectively be the second cohort of 3-year LLB programs. The advantage of being a pioneer in any field is that in some ways you get to set the terms of the discussion. And this is what our pioneer group of LLB students is already doing. They're coming to us very proactively with options, with ideas, and we are happy to work with them and develop them. Yeah. But just to summarize, let me just say, we are trying to make sure that there are opportunities available for those who want to do conventional legal practice, but also trying to provide opportunities for people who are coming to an LLB with a view to, a much broader exposure to things and want to do different things with that. So even in the past, there's been a lot of flexibility in the 5-year program where people have come up and proposed ways of doing internships at what might seem unconventional. But as long as you make a case for why this is valuable to you, the university is quite open in adjusting to such requests.
Okay, thank you. I think one other question is that some students have already graduated but have taken a break of a year or two and now want to apply for the NLSAT. Is that possible?
Short answer, yes.
Okay. We also observed that a lot of you are asking about scholarships. I think like Bhavin has already mentioned, the scholarship details are available on the website already. We are also going to share the link of our 3-year LLB honors page on the chat window for all of you. You can check the fee tab, and on the fee tab, there will be a section called financial aid, where the link to all the scholarship options have been provided. So we would request all of you to please check that page. And I think a lot of the questions that have been raised here will be answered through that page. For any specific queries, there are certain specific queries which we cannot get into during the session. We would request you to please send an email to the email address that we are putting in the chat window right now. It's called nlsat.query@nls.ac.in. We have just put that in the chat window as well. So for all specific questions, request you to please direct them to this particular email ID or visit the website page.
Thank you. I'll just step in here with one more observation and some very interesting questions that are coming in on the Q&A. A number of you are asking very detailed questions about the NLSAT LLB test. What's the word limit for this? How do I prepare for that? So on and so forth. We hear you. There are a number of people who've got such queries. And as I said earlier, we will be conducting a special session focused on the test at a later date for all candidates who have registered for the NLSAT LLB. So I'd encourage you to apply for the test, go to the website, complete your application, and this event will be made available to registered candidates fairly soon. With that said, as I said, in addition to all of these questions that we're getting, there's some very interesting questions coming in the Q&A. So I'm just going to pick those out, and Betsy and Arun, you could respond to them perhaps. One thing that we haven't spoken about so far, other than in passing, but I would think is very critical to the time that people spend at NLS, is what's the campus life like? I mean, you've talked about classes and internships and all of that, but what else is there for us to do in terms of extracurricular activities?
Betsy, do you want to start, and I can supplement as well?
Sure, Bhavin. In terms of extracurricular activities, we do have a lot of options available. In terms of, most of them are student-led, and there are quite a few activities that regularly happen in campus to make campus life not just become filled with academic rigor, but be exciting as well. So we have a variety of options. That if you in fact look at the website, there'll be a list of student-led initiatives which are basically being available in campus as such. So it's very much there.
Yeah, so just to add to that, you will find, and as Betsy said, if you look at the names of the student committees, you get a sense of, there's a literary and debating society. There are also people interested in theater. I mean, I will say that the pandemic, of course, affected all of this, like everybody else. NLS was shut for some time, though we did open up fairly early. And I can tell you that as a faculty member on campus, I've attended a wonderful Drupad ceremony performance that was held at the campus. There is a fairly active now, and it's getting more and more active, movie screening society, which is led by students, and there are also faculty advisors involved. NLS has sports facilities on its campus, and there are multiple sports competitions being held. There is an active moot court society, which is a law-based activity, and several students take part in those. The campus is also being redeveloped. The library is being redeveloped, and the idea is to add an auditorium to that, which will also enable people to engage in things which have no connection to the law, but will allow people who have other talents to also explore. So that's just a little bit. The website, I will also say, Vineshri has curated many posts about what all do students do on campus. And I would encourage you to look at the archives of the website to get information about such activities.
Thank you, Betsy and Arun. I'm going to pick up one more question, simply because of two reasons. One, that it's a rather unusual question. And the second reason is that I think this is the sort of question that will probably bring a smile to every teacher's face. The question is, everyone's talking about internships and getting jobs and doing all of these different things while we're at law school, but I've noticed that a lot of law schools neglect academics. What is NLS's view on that? How do you maintain academic rigor? What actually goes on in a classroom beyond just a Q&A kind of format?
Betsy, why don't you start?
Yeah, so if you look at a traditional classroom in NLS, academic rigor is very much there because students come prepared to classes. So we have a reading shared with them ahead of class, so they come prepared. And in terms of engagement with the reading and with the faculty, there's a lot happening in class. So it's much more vibrant and lively instead of a traditional lecture where only the teacher talks. This is more interactive. And in terms of basically what they do other than attending classes, we do also have research projects that students have to undertake for each course. So they would have to basically choose a topic of their own, research on it, have an original piece of writing, which they generate, for which they are scored for their internal component. And we also do have student presentations that happen in class regularly. So they don't just improve their writing skills, but also their basically speaking skills. So they speak up in class, and there's a lot of interaction there as well. Apart from that, in elective courses, there are completely research papers which are basically mandatory as well. So there's a lot of research and learning, self-led learning that's happening in classrooms as well and outside the classroom as well.
Thanks, Betsy. So just to supplement that, I think Betsy had already mentioned that in the early years, NLS tried to bring in some form of Socratic learning, and you could do this in a class which is large but not too large. So a batch size of 80 people enable that, and that basically meant that you don't, and this is what we are trying to emphasize, that university education is different from school education. It is not just about preparing for some big test at the end of a year or two. It's also about learning together and collectively. So even in your first year classes, you're expected to come to class not as blank slates, but as having done a little bit of preparation on a material. And as Betsy said, there are many ways by which you can have a conversation in class. And what we expect, so to go to Bhavan's question about what is academic rigor, at one level, you will just learn to read more closely. You will learn to understand that texts have different purposes, that there's different styles of learning and engaging with text, and not just reading, but also listening to colleagues and learning from peers, which I do want to say is a very important part of the pedagogical style at NLS, particularly in the 3-year cohort, where just looking at the experience of the first cohort, there are students who graduated from very good colleges and pre-university courses and graduate programs across the country. Right? So you have people from many different colleges in Delhi University. You have people from Presidency in Calcutta, Stella Maris in Chennai, Mount Carmel in Bangalore. These are all people who typically would have graduated at the top of their class. in different disciplines. So you have a group of people who are political science, economics, or in some cases, engineers as well. So you learn very much from, of course, the instructors and the reading assigned to you. But I would suggest to you that perhaps, and Betsy mentioned that I've been an undergraduate student at NLS. I think I will say that I learned as much from my peers as I did from my instructors. And that is a philosophy that we are trying to continue as we go forward with newer programs and also new experimentation in terms of what we can teach. I would suggest that in terms of, again, going back to Bhavan's question about rigor, please take a look at the faculty website. NLS in just the last 3 years has recruited quite extensively from, and not just in the law program, but in the social sciences and humanities program. And I'm going to suggest to you that some of the people who teach social sciences and humanities are amongst the best in their fields in the country. So the rigor comes from the fact that you are going from one class to the other across a day, and you're meeting and engaging with scholars and teachers who are very good in their fields and are eager to convey the passion for the subject that they have to you. Right? All that in the company of very meritorious, very eager students who are willing to learn. I think that is what collectively counts for academic rigor. So I hope that answers your question, Bhavan.
It certainly does. I'm just going to pass back to Vinaya. Vinaya, I believe you had one more question.
Yeah, I think a few students also want to know more about how they could participate in moot court competitions. Is that a possibility once they enroll into the program, and how that would be helpful in legal education?
So I'll take a quick stab at that. So moot courts are open. There is an open competition held for people on campus. So the minute you come in, you become a part of the 3-year LLB cohort. Even in the 5-year LLB cohort, it's not like there are spaces reserved for particular students for moot courts. It's an open competition. There are selections. I'm not very familiar with the current style, but I used to moot when I was an undergraduate student here. Typically, there are 3 rounds of selection, and people who go through all 3 rounds, there is a roll of people who are then selected, and they represent NLS in different moot court competitions, both within India and abroad. So that is a common process open to anybody who wants to take part in it. It's also open to first-year students, though first-year students sometimes may not have the legal background to be able to be. Some of those moot court questions are framed around criminal law or trade law. These are subjects that students do a little later in the program. But even for those, it's open to anybody to come in and prepare and take a shot at it. So the 3-year LLB students will also have access to not just moot courts, but any of the activities. So Betsy mentioned that there are multiple student committees, all of which are listed on our website. And these opportunities are also open to anybody who's a member of the student community in NLS, which today means students in the Masters in Public Policy program, students in the LLM, which is a 1-year program, and of course, people in other, the PhD program could also take part, subject to their own course requirements and program requirements.
Thank you very much, Arun. I think some of you have also been asking a couple of questions that are already there on the FAQ section of the 3-year LLB page, as Arun has mentioned earlier already. Sample questions and other details will be updated on the FAQ section, so would request all of you to please check that. Some of you have also asked social media handles. That's available on the website as well. On the footer of the website, at the bottom of the website, all our social media handles are available, and you can follow our handles to get updates. And someone has also mentioned about registration for future webinars. They will be open even for unregistered candidates. If you have not registered for the NLSAT, you can still register for the webinars. I hope there's no confusion about that. All webinars in the future will have links where you can register and attend these sessions. And yes, the recording will also be made available on our website of these sessions.
Thank you very, very much. It's now left to me to wrap things up. Before I say thank you and bye-bye to everybody, I understand that there are some concerns about the test, and many of you are very curious about that. As I said, we will have a much more detailed session focusing exclusively on the test soon. But as a quick recap, the test is on the 30th of April this year. The test will have two parts. The first part comprises a set of multiple choice questions, which are from the areas of comprehension, current affairs, and critical reasoning. The second portion, which is part B, will have two sorts of questions that will require you to write out your answers. The first is what we're calling legal aptitude or legal reasoning. And the second is a set of topics on which you must write an essay that demonstrates your analytical abilities. That's about as much as I can say about the test at this time, but there are a couple of resources that are in the chat for you already. One is the page on the website, which has details of the program. The second is an email address. The email address in particular is what you might consider using for any specific queries about, oh, I am in such and such year of this program, my results will be out by this date, am I eligible to apply? Or I've been staying here for so many years, am I eligible for a particular reservation category, so on and so forth. You would appreciate that these are very particular questions that we can't take on in a session like this, but would be extremely happy to help with on our email helpline. Thank you all. Do remember to complete your application for the NLSAT LLB at the earliest, so you don't miss out on any unique sessions or any special sessions that we have for registered candidates, which will be announced in advance, of course, to all registered candidates. Thank you very much to all my colleagues, Shanta, Vinayashri, and of course to our two speakers for the day, Dr. Thiruvengadam, Dr. Rajasingh, and thank you to all of the participants who took the time to join us today. Bye-bye.